Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should. And please check out getitinwriting.net/shows for a full list of our podcasts and YouTube series.
We're here at Summer NAMM with our old buddy Dino Monoxelos. And it took me years to learn how to pronounce that name.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
My mother doesn't even know how to pronounce it.
Exactly.
You've had this rather interesting and circumlocucious career, as have many of us.
Oh, yeah.
You are well known as a bass player and probably equally well known as the Ampeg guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, music came first.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Tell me about the evolution a little bit.
Oh, sports kind of came first.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I grew up in a football family. My dad was, my dad's in the football Hall of Fame in our local town, and my brothers all played football, and so I was brought up in a very non-musical family.
Interesting. So are you the only musician in the family?
My older sister played clarinet in the marching band. That was about it.
Wow.
My experience was growing up listening to Greek music on Sunday mornings and church music, like Greek Orthodox church music, not even like gospel stuff.
So you were probably counseled early on to get a real job and have a 6-year career and all that stuff,
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how did the road to hell begin for you then?
It's well, like a lot of my older peers said, when they saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, that's what launched it. Well, I saw Kiss on the who was the comedian? He used to do the Halloween special. Is it Don Martin?
Rowan and Martin?
No, not Roland and Martin.
It wasn't Flip Wilson, was it?
No, it wasn't Flip Wilson. But anyways,
some TV show.
Yeah, it was this Halloween special, and
you said right away, I need me a pair of platform shoes, right?
I want to be Kiss. I want to be in Kiss. And that's kind of what started. At the time, I was playing clarinet in school jazz bands and stuff like that. But I wanted to take guitar lessons. Actually, I wanted to take bass lessons. I never even really had any interest.
So you were, that was going to be another question.
Yeah.
You were drawn immediately to bass.
Yeah.
Because that's, it's for me, I was first drawn to bass, and then I was given a guitar.
Yeah.
And I started playing guitar, and I immediately, well, not immediately, but over a couple of years, I gravitated back toward bass.
Yeah.
Because there really is I think there's a different mentality among bass players.
Oh,
in that
absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of it, of course, is because we are sort of the bridge between the melody and the rhythm. But I think there's also, I've had this conversation with a number of people about why so many bass players become producers.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of that whole sort of understanding of arrangement and ensemble and big picture playing that comes with playing a bass.
Yeah, and I think it comes from, let's face it, guitar players and singers to some degree, they want to be out front. Bass players kind of don't want to be out front. We want to be part of the action, but we kind of want to be the support scene. And by doing that, we listen to everything. Listen to the vocals, listen to the keyboard parts, listen to the drum parts. You're back there, so you're kind of listening to everything anyways. And I think that's why a lot of bass players have gone on to be good producers. Because they listen to everything.
Yeah, I've also said many times, people don't notice until you stop playing.
Oh,
or
yeah.
you play a clam.
Yeah. That's, I'll be the first to, when the amp breaks or the cord, cable disconnects or something like that, you're the first one that everybody's like looking at you like, where'd that come?
I didn't even know you were there.
Yeah, right. I know it.
It's true. It's true. But so how did this work for you? Where you, obviously the next thing was you had to be in a rock and roll band, right?
Of course. Yeah.
But did you have visions of that becoming a musical career for you? Did you want to be a rock star?
Yeah, I did. I started playing in this band called Rockin' Horse that toured up and down New England, the East Coast, doing all rock covers, some originals. I really wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to full on, And that lasted, I don't know, that lasted probably about, the band lasted a few years. And then, I don't know if it was me or the guys in the band, but I just felt like, this is getting old. Like, we're not getting any better, we're not progressing, we're playing the same rooms, we're making the same money, we're not writing any new music. Like, you guys are all content with just doing this. I want more. So I made the choice, I don't know, like late 80s, early 90s, I started looking at music schools. Figuring, well, maybe that's the next way, that's the next evolution.
When you say music schools, do you mean formal music training, recording, or
No, formal
what?
music training.
Okay.
Yeah, because at that time, like, other than private lessons, you know,
there wasn't the abundance of recording schools that there are now.
yeah, I don't think even like Berkeley at the time, I don't even think they had a recording program. So yeah, I started researching schools. I looked at Berkeley, obviously growing up in Boston or New Hampshire. And then, you know, LA, North Texas State, you know, that was kind of like, well, I don't know if I really want to go to school for 4 years, you know, and get a degree. And I remember talking to my dad about it, about going to Berkeley. He says, well, you know, we're going to spend all this money to send you to a music school. You're going to graduate with a music degree, and you're still going to be doing $50 blues gigs.
With thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Well, yeah,
of
you
course.
know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So at this school in Hollywood, California, Musicians Institute, which has been around for years, they offered a one-year program. It was, you know, a certificate program. It was my excuse to go to LA and still kind of pursue that rock star thing, because it's like metal bands were just kind of, it was right between the time between metal and the Seattle thing.
It was the hairband era. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was working in the studios in LA back
So it was
then.
my perfect, that was like my perfect opportunity. And I presented it to my parents, and they were like, well, you're going to school, okay, you know, in LA and this and that. So yeah, 91, I packed up a U-Haul truck, and I packed up the truck. I had my Harley, all my SVTs, and all my basses, and a couple of boxes worth of clothes.
What else do you need?
Other than whiskey,
Yeah.
that was pretty much it, and some food. So yeah, I landed in LA in 91.
That was an interesting club scene there. Actually, I was in LA until 92, and then I left for Europe.
Okay.
But, so I was there during that scene as well, and I know it was there was a lot of transitioning going on, not only in terms of the music, but also in terms of the technology. I mean, the studios I was working in were transitioning from 2-inch tape to the very first digital audio workstations and digital tape and whatnot. And home studios were starting because you had all the ADATs and stuff like that. So I think not only was it a technological evolution, but the creative process was changing because of the more or less the evolution of the project studio and all of that.
Yeah.
So that must have been an interesting thing to be witnessing too, no doubt, right?
Yeah, it was funny because I remember I at that time I ran into Leland Sklar, and you know, Lee, as we know, is world famous studio guy. And it was just it was like I met him through a mutual friend at a drag racing event. So we're hanging out, and you know, I just asked Lee, you know, I says, hey, mind me asking you a question about the studio scene, this and that. I says, I moved to LA about a year ago, and you know, what's the studio scene situation in LA? And he said that. He says, you missed it by about 3 or 4 years because of all these technological advancements. People, all the big budget recordings were kind of going away because everybody was moving their studios into their project studios.
And all the studio owners were griping about it because I worked for a couple major studios, and that was their biggest gripe. If they could have blown up Alesis, they would have done it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so like all those demo sessions just kind of dried up. And, you know, the bigger sessions they're going to hire guys like Leland and Neil and Nathan. So yeah, it was like, I missed that. And I missed the hair metal scene because that was just phasing out too. You know what I mean? Like all the Hollywood strip scene was just kind of dying off at that point.
Yeah.
So at that point I was like, all right, well, I'll focus on my schooling, and after going there for a year, I ended up teaching there for about 6 years after I graduated. So I was a teacher, teaching at MI, and then
Teaching bass playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They had these classes called live playing workshops, and they all had different focuses. So like you could go to a blues live playing workshop and play blues charts, or they even had a Tower Power LPW where all they did was Tower Power tunes. And
that's quite a challenge.
Yeah. And you're reading all that stuff down, and so I did that for about 6 years.
So how'd you fall into the Ampeg thing?
Well, Ampeg has always been my amp of choice. Even back in those MI days, I remember calling the Ampeg product manager at the time, Tony Moskal, about trying to get some Ampeg into the school, which he was gracious enough. He supplied an amp, but then I had moved back. 97, my wife and I and my first daughter moved back to New England. Completely new scene for me, even though I grew up there. It was a whole new scene. And I tell this to everybody, man, you want to get into a music scene really quick, into a new area, go work at the local music store.
Sure.
And you'll meet every musician there is, even if Guitar Center, whatever. So I did that. I worked at a music store, and I befriended our Ampeg rep at the time. And we had just opened up Ampeg. I remember the store owner comes downstairs. He goes, listen, he says, I just took on Ampeg on your recommendation. We needed a bass line. You said Ampeg. He says, but the buy-in was like, at the time I want to say it was like $5,000 or $6,000 to buy into the product. He says,
a lot more money back then too.
Yeah, this is, he says, I just bought $5,000 worth of Ampeg. You don't sell this stuff, you're out of here. So I called every bass player I knew in town, and, hey, we got Ampeg, this, that. And long story short, I ended up selling this stuff in like a couple of weeks to where he had to place another order. The rep comes in, he goes, how'd you sell all this Ampeg stuff? I said, well, it's friggin' Ampeg. It's easy to sell, SVTs.
It's ice cream in the desert, man.
And so he wasn't a bass player, so he's like, would you mind if I used you to do demonstrations all around the Northeast? Because he was the Northeast rep, upstate New York. So on my days off, he was like, hey man, I'm doing this presentation at so-and-so Music in Connecticut. Do you want to drive down with me and demo some of this stuff for me? So that turned into that, then that eventually turned into NAMM shows and trade shows, and then eventually, it's a lot cheaper to just hire you full-time. So that, it turned into a full-time gig.
Interesting. And you went through, 3 or 4 different owners with Ampeg, right?
I'm currently on my 3rd owner.
Right.
Or I should say the brand is currently on its 3rd owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time it was St. Louis Music, which was a small family-owned company. The Kornblum family owned it.
And then Ted sold to Loud.
And then Ted sold to Loud Technologies, which it was at Loud from about 2004, 2005 up until 2018. And then just recently, Yamaha in 2018 bought Ampeg.
It's interesting. You also, not only very different cultures, but from different parts of the country, St. Louis.
Yes.
And then Seattle. And now Southern California.
Yeah, Southern California.
Yeah. Culturally speaking, that's, it's interesting because the label has survived. The label has definitely evolved and changed, and I think to a certain extent the products have because, science.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that, ultimately you're still kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you always have been. And what I think is really kind of cool is that because you are an artist yourself, you know how to talk to the artist. That was always the thing for me as an artist relations guy, was understanding the mentality of the people I'm talking to. As you say, you work in the music store, same thing. You're talking to people as a peer.
Yes.
That's so important because they know that you understand their pain points.
Yeah. And it's, so it's how can I say it? Like, I remember when I first started with St. Louis Music, Crate Amps had a product specialist who's a dear friend. I just saw him yesterday, a dear friend of mine, Jay Hayes. And I remember Jay, he was, and still is, actually, he works for a different company now, but he was the consummate product specialist. Like, I remember talking to him one day. I said, hey, we're at, because Crate and Ampeg shared the same booth. I said, hey, Jay, I said, what is that, what's the Blue Voodoo go for? He goes, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? He goes, I'm the product specialist, man. I don't know that. And there were people in the booth. And afterwards, everybody cleared out. He goes, $3.99. So what are you talking about? He goes, $3.99 for the Blue Voodoo. Yeah. So why don't you just tell me that? He says, dude, let me tell you something. The minute you quote a price,
you're a sales guy.
You're a sales guy. You're no longer the product guy.
Yes.
He says, even though you know
Good
the
point.
price, he says, sometimes, he's not that you always have to be that way. He said, but when you go into a store as a product specialist and you're there to show product, you have the sales rep with you. He's there to talk prices and programs. You're there to get them excited about the product and play it.
Yes.
The minute you start talking programs and prices, you've now just crossed over into the sales aspect of what you do.
Yes, and one of the things that we do as artist relations people is we're there to basically say, here's a tool that you've got to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whether it's a microphone you need for a session or a bass amp that you need for a certain sound, whatever it is, you're there to talk about the gear as a creative instrument.
Exactly.
And if you start putting numbers on it, if you start putting specs on it, prices, anything like that, you have then reduced it to something, a commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Interesting
No,
perspective,
that's and like you say, coming from the artist standpoint of thing, I play this stuff every weekend, sometimes every week, depending on gig schedules, but I play this stuff all the time, from SVTs to the new rocket bass stuff that we're doing. I play it. So, and I just had this conversation with an artist a couple of weeks ago. He was asking me about this amp, and I told him, I was like, that's not the amp for you, dude. I know your sound. I know what you're trying to do. You don't want that. He's like, yeah, but I was reading the specs on it. It's like, trust me, try this instead. And he did. And he came back to me. He was like, man, this is why so many artists, when you talk to people in the Ampeg community, this is why people listen to you. You don't bullshit them. You're not going to give them something that they don't want, or try and give them something that
you're not there to sell something.
Yeah.
You're there to help them.
I want to make your experience the easiest experience to do what you want to do.
It's interesting because, in a sense, that is a sales mentality, but
Yeah.
it's no, let me rephrase that. It's a mentality that some of the better salespeople have.
Yeah.
Because I think that a good salesperson also understands, to a certain extent, psychology, right?
Yeah.
And the psychology of how am I going to help you get to a point where you are getting what you want? How am I going to get to yes with you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how am I going to get there? I'm going to get there by giving you what you really want, not by convincing you that you want something else.
Yeah. I want you to trust me.
Yeah.
Just like I go to my mechanic and he says, Dino, you need 4 new tires on your truck. Okay.
Yeah,
I've been doing business with you for 20 years. I trust you.
Yeah. So let me loop in another concept here, because one of the things that I think is, it holds true for almost everyone in our industry, is the idea that we are multifaceted individuals. When you're young, you have an idea, as you did, I want to be a rock star,
Yeah.
and you set this goal, and because we're young, we're so focused on that goal that everything else is just a blur, man, But as you start getting older and you start having more experiences, you realize that all of these different experiences contribute to who you are, and essentially we take all of these different experiences, and that goal that we had pointed to years ago turns out maybe we're going to end up way over there, or maybe we're going to end up somewhere else. And there's a certain aspect of being open to whatever comes, and there's also an aspect of just kind of looking at all the different things you do and saying, you know what, I'm kind of open to this, and this is kind of cool, and I hadn't really considered this. And you know, a lot of times I come out from a lot of these, you know, I do these tech track talks at NAMM, and I come out from them, and students come up to me and they say, you know, I had no idea that was even a thing. I didn't know people made money that way, you know, because you have this perspective, and it does mature as you get older. And for you, I think you're a great example of the idea that I had all these other talents that I didn't even really realize I had necessarily, and yet, you know, they sort of form the basis of who you are.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, I never really looked at it that way, you know, but I mean, you know, it's funny when you say it, because the thing that popped into my mind, it's like somebody was telling me, like, if you're captaining a cruise ship, and you're going from Europe to New York City, and you leave Europe, and even if you vary your course by half a degree, by the time you get to the United States, you could be hundreds of miles off course.
Sure. Look at Columbus.
Exactly.
Damn, did he get lost?
Yeah, he got really screwed up. He was looking for India.
He needed GPS, man.
But it's kind of, you know, life kind of does that same thing. You know, it's like I knew where I wanted to go, but sometimes you kind of veer off course. And not necessarily, you know, sometimes you veer off voluntarily, sometimes you veer off involuntarily, you know. But yeah, it was like, you know, I had I know I wanted to do that, but along the way, it's like, you know what? I really want to get married. I really want to have kids. I want to, you know, that's where, but there's other things in life I really want to experience, you know, and credit to the rock stars, because they stayed focused on their course. They didn't let anything else interfere.
Which is pretty difficult.
That is extremely difficult.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just out of ignorance, sometimes it's out of habit, sometimes it's out of whatever it is. I had other I don't want to say distractions, but I had other interests in my life that I wanted to experience.
Life happens to you. Yeah. So, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, you know, it's like, so my focus changed to, okay, I want to go there, but I want all this other stuff around me. So how do I have it all?
Yeah.
And well, all right. So I can't be a rock star right now. So I have to go talk about bass amplifiers, or I gotta go teach, or I've got to go sell, or I've got to do other things. The ways to the means, or the means to the ways, I guess. Yeah.
But you know, another interesting byproduct of that, you experienced it through artist relations. I experienced it both through artist relations and also through working in the studio, is that as we get older, we start realizing that, you know what, being a rock star is a hell of a lot of work, and it's not all that it's cracked up to be, because, you know, you can't have a normal life. You know, how many times have you or I been with someone who you just want to get from point A to point B, but you can't, because 80,000 people want to talk to you, take a picture with you. You know, you can't just get in your car and go to the supermarket, you know, because there is this notoriety that you have cultivated. And I think, you know, for me, I have to say, originally I wanted to be rich and famous. I'd rather be rich and anonymous, man.
Exactly. I don't want anybody to know I have money.
Exactly. You know, and I think there's a real beauty to that. You know, so to me, I think the both of us really kind of found a space where we're happy with what we do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And, you know, to a certain extent, it's almost like, you know, if you're a rock star, you're constantly competing with not only other rock stars, but yourself. You know, like, how am I going to outdo that last album? You know, things like that. And with people in other aspects of work, I mean, you have created for yourself a niche. Ain't nobody else in that niche. You know,
Yeah.
there's other people who do similar things and whatnot. Same thing for me. You know, there are plenty of other people who do whatever it is, like a webcast like I'm doing now, or the artist relations stuff, or PR stuff that I've been doing for 20 years.
Yep.
But I have been able to create my own niche.
Yep.
And I think there's a certain beauty in that because, you know, ultimately you're going to be yourself. You're
Yeah.
going to be who you are. And you have the beauty of being able to, as you said, take all those other things that you want, you know, and not only how do I get to where I wanted to be, but how do I define success, you know?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is such a big thing,
Yeah.
man, because, you know, you are successful.
Yeah,
you know?
I think so.
You're not the rock star that you thought was going to be success. You're a different version of success, you know?
Yeah.
I wanted to be a rock star too.
Yeah.
You know, I never in a million years would have imagined myself running a successful PR agency.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And yet, there's something about the whole idea that you can redefine success. You can essentially redefine what you're doing, and you know, ultimately, you're still doing what's important to you.
Yeah.
And if anything, you end up being happier.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, it's like, I mean, I still consider myself, people ask me, what do I do? I'm a professional musician.
Uh-huh.
You know, I still introduce, unless I don't want to get into that conversation. You know, if you're on an airplane, it's like, hey, what do you do for a living? I'm in marketing.
Well, and you know, that's funny. I've had that conversation too, where I've, you know, well, should I say I'm a PR guy or should I
Yeah,
say I'm a
right.
musician?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because immediately they want to, oh, well, who have you worked with? You
Yeah,
know? And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
you
It's
know
like,
what?
I don't want to get into that
yeah,
discussion.
Yeah, you know. And a lot of times it really is because they have unrealistic views of what you do.
Yes.
You know?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
Oh,
oh, I
yeah.
bet you work with all sorts of, yeah, well, you know what? I did, and I don't want to talk to you about that.
Exactly,
You know?
yeah. And like you said, you know, I mean, especially over this last year, you know, being a rock star wasn't an easy gig. I mean, I had a lot of rock stars calling me up saying,
gosh, yeah.
is there anything I can do to, you know, to basically earn a paycheck?
Yeah.
Sort of thing, you know?
Sure.
You know, and I mean, I don't know how many conversations, you know, I'll be at a trade show with somebody or see one of my buddies that, you know, is on tour saying how he's missing, you know, him and his wife's, you know, 20th anniversary or their
Yeah.
kid's birthday party.
Yeah.
Or this.
Or the birth
that.
of your child, for that matter.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because they're on the road.
Yeah.
You know? And
Absolutely.
I mean, you and I have had to experience that in the past too. All right, we gotta,
Sure.
you know, I'm leaving tomorrow, so I'm gonna miss this, or I'm
Winter
gonna miss
Nam
that.
falls every
Oh, yeah.
year on my wedding
Oh, that's right.
anniversary, okay?
That's
So
right, too.
believe me,
Yes,
I know.
You know,
My
absolutely.
long-suffering wife, you know.
Yeah.
But again, you know, there are certain sacrifices you're willing to make.
Yes.
There are others that, you know, you're kind of glad you didn't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And,
And,
yeah, it's
you know, the long and short of it, man, is like, you know, we have a job. I mean, you measure success. I come to NAMM shows, and in fact, I remember the first year that Yamaha had Ampeg at NAMM, and all my coworkers at Yamaha or YGG, they were all, I told them, I says, I don't take lunches, I don't leave the booth. And that first day, at the end of the day, like they all came over there like, oh my God. Like even when you had to run out to go to the bathroom, people were coming in, hey, where's Dino?
Sure.
Where's Dino?
Sure.
Where's Dino?
I was one of them, man. I was looking for you.
I was like, I even have them follow me into the bathroom at times, you know, because,
Yeah.
I mean, and I consider everybody my friend. You know,
Sure.
I think that's probably part of my success is I treat
point.
everybody like their family.
That's a really good point. And that is something that I think is not only part of artist relations, it's part of relationships in general.
Yeah.
And it's such a big part of what we do in this industry.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about relationships. It's all about the people you know, because yeah, same thing with me. I consider these people friends and family, and man, without that, it's a job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and it's
totally.
not a fun job in that sense,
Yeah.
you know? And I always have to laugh about that because every year, well, hasn't been lately because of COVID, but every year people used to gripe about, you know, oh, I have to go to NAMM. And for me, man, it's like, you know what? This is like summer camp, you know? I love it because I get to see all these people I haven't seen in a year and catch
Yeah.
up on stuff, man. I mean, to me, that's like,
Yeah.
it's a golden opportunity,
Yeah.
you know? And it's not about the business.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, I don't think I've ever come away from a trade show with, you know, a new client or something like that.
Yeah.
I've never come away with business. What I've come away with is a feeling of, man, I love this.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God, that NAMM is like, it's the trade show that everybody loves to bitch about. But, and I've said it a million times. I mean, I think this past winter NAMM, or the last one that was live, I want to
2020,
say that
yeah.
was my 35th winter NAMM.
It was my 32nd. Yeah.
And I go into the show every year with a smile. I come out of the show every year with a
Sore feet and a smile.
I've worked
yeah.
the hardest I'm going to work all year, sort of thing. But number one, where else? What other industry? And there's a lot of other industries, but that you can go in and, like you said, meet friends that you haven't seen in a year, you know, hang out, have dinner with, have a couple of cocktails with, whatever. But it's also, you know, dealers and people that attend this show, they plan their entire year around this show. Some store owners spend thousands and thousands of dollars to come to the show. The least we can do is show up to the show with a smile and some energy and say, here we are.
Yeah,
Here's our new
exactly.
product. This is the new this is the new that. Let me introduce you to Rudy Sarzo. Let me introduce you to this guy. Or, hey, I just met James Burton. The James
Wow.
Burton. Just before I came up here. And like, I mean, with all the artists I've met, I'm like, I met James Burton. Like, you know, Elvis. And oh my gosh. So
And that's kind of the funny thing too, is, you know, for us in the industry, we fanboy out about people that everybody else says, who?
yeah.
To be able to talk to somebody and say, hey, so what happened here? And how, you know, tell me the stories. That's shop
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
It's shop talk to us, but man, it's just, that's why we're in this industry.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. Like you were saying, you know, when you get into a conversation with somebody, they find out what business you're in. You know, like, well, who famous have you met? Nobody really. I know a lot of people that have played with a lot of famous people that are famous in my circle. You know, like the bass player that played on Green Onions. You know, Duck Dunn, stuff like that. It's like, who's Duck Dunn? Well, you know who Booker T was, you know, Booker T.
exactly.
Oh, yeah, I know Booker T and the MGs.
Maybe.
Well, there was this, maybe.
Maybe,
Exactly. Same thing when you get into the conversation about Motown. You know, it's you know,
who was James Jamerson?
Yeah.
Funny name.
Who recorded, you know, My Girl? Oh, that was the Temptations. No, it wasn't. It was the Temptations that sang on it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
Same thing, you know, again, same thing with James Burton. Nobody knows who James Burton is. But,
Sure, yeah. But we do.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is, you know, that's kind of one of the things for me that feeds my feeling of, yes, I've been successful. Because success to me is defined by, have you led a satisfying life and had a satisfying career? And man, I have gotten to meet, and you as well, I know, have gotten to meet not only our childhood idols in that sense, but people we didn't even know at the time would be somebody we'd look up to, you know?
Yeah.
And yet you go, oh my gosh, you know, really, you did that, you know?
You know, I guess, it's funny, as you know, I had back surgery about 2 years ago. And come out of surgery, that night, my cell phone rings. Wife picks it up. Oh yeah, he's right here, hold on. It's Rudy Sarzo. Call. Hey man, just checking to see how your surgery went. I hung up the phone, I was like, how's that? Like, Rudy called me as a buddy.
Yep.
Not, hey, I need an amplifier, or hey, I'm going on the road, or hey, can we set up? Just called me to see how my surgery came out.
Sure. Really, none of us is one-dimensional.
Oh, well, you're a human being too.
Isn't it so funny, man? It's
you
like,
build model airplanes.
right.
You know?
But when you have a public persona, that's all people see.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I'm really grateful that we've had normal lives, or quote unquote,
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
for people in the industry.
Yeah,
anyway.
normal in this business
Yes.
for normal. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
No, I agree.
So, one last question for you,
Okay.
since we both deal with a lot of young up-and-comers.
Yeah.
As I said at the outset of this conversation, you've had a very, very diverse and kind of circumlocucious career. What kind of advice would you give a 15 or 16-year-old you coming up in the industry now?
Boy. I got to really dig deep on this one, because as I get older, I have to learn new things as well that my 18-year-old daughter and my 25-year-old daughter, I had to think about that for a second, they school me on. That wasn't around when I was their age. But it's the same fundamentals. I think it'd be the same fundamentals. Obviously, work hard, stay focused. That would probably be the most I could say is stay focused. Have a vision. If you want to be a rock star, be a rock star. Focus on that.
But I would add to that, be open.
Yeah.
Because, the same way that your career evolved because you were open.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your first premise, which is work hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many times you hear about people who say, I got this gig because I
Yeah.
was the only one
Well,
willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. So if I think back, I've been a truck driver. I've been a car salesman. I've been a meat department, like not a butcher, but working in a grocery store. And I'm talking like going all the way back to my high school days.
Sure.
I've managed a music store. I taught fourth grade music classes. I taught college level music classes. I worked in a music store, so that, the car salesman kind of background. So just every opportunity that presents itself to you, you may look at it at that point in time and go, why am I doing this? But I promise, 5, 6, 10, 20 years down the road, you're going to call back on that experience because it's going to help you where you are 10,
Exactly.
15 years down the road.
It all makes it part of who you are.
Absolutely.
And I think that to me is one of the most beautiful things about it, because we become multifaceted because we have real lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about it, is that you can draw on all of these different aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And you're right, they all really do come into play for who we are now.
Yeah. Don't ever be ashamed to take a job, too. That's the other thing that I learned, too.
Yeah.
I remember when I came back from LA, I had an awful chip on my shoulder. I didn't want to leave LA. I was miserable to the world, like to my wife, to my kid. And I remember my uncle, who was an optometrist at the time, and he pulled me aside. He says, Dino, let me tell you something. He says, when I first opened my practice, he says, do you think I had customers, patients, making a point? He says, no. He says, he's fresh out of optometry school. I opened my practice. I would have maybe 1, 2 patients a day. He says, I worked at the grocery store across the street, bagging groceries, and when my phone would ring, that's when I would make an appointment. He says, so I was doing this to support this.
Sure.
Until I could build up my patient or my practice.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where the point is don't ever be ashamed to take a job to put bread on the table for your family. Even though you may not think it's related to what you're focused on, eventually it's going to come around full circle.
Sure. And either that's going to be a different direction for you, or it's those experiences. Absolutely.
Enjoy the ride.
Sure, man.
It's a short ride, so enjoy it. That's the last thing I'll say is, man, you don't realize how short it is.
It's so true,
So
man.
enjoy it.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Dino Monoxelos, thank you for being my guest.
Daniel, thank you as well. Always a pleasure talking with you, man.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Likewise. Thank you. Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.